So let's say our Prime Global firms, because they're Prime Global, have been successful in getting prospects. Give some ideas on how to convert those prospects to clients during challenging times.
I'm glad you asked the question, because it is one of those places of gaps. It's a big gap. And that is, surprise, surprise, we don't have partners and others in CPA firms who have been trained in telesales. Okay. It is a functional discipline that requires as much respect as auditing. And I'm a former auditor, so I was sitting in a Zoom room with about 12, partners on the phone, and our telesales guy, who is an outside vendor that I've used for many years, or I recommended to my clients. And so I recommended him into this client, and they were talking about how they were going to give him certain leads, but not other ones. And I said, excuse me, but why would you not give them the other ones? And they said, well, those are the plums. Those are the ones we keep. And we just give him the cats and dogs and the rats and the mice. And I said, wait a minute. And I went into my, Bob, how many years of telesales experience have you had? And he said, oh, I think 20 or 30. And I said, oh, okay. I said, well, let's do this. Bob, why don't you replace Jake and you do Jake's audits, and then Jake, you're going to replace Bob and you do all his telesales. How's that sound? And I said, I rest my case. Okay. So don't be trying something this is not time for amateur hour. This is time to get a resource in there. And the resource is somebody who has telesales experience, not telemarketing, not marketing. It's sales, and it's called telesales, and they are out here and they are good. And so he has been so wonderful. And that, if I were a managing partner, that would be the resource that I would be spending money on to take these leads and to develop them into revenue.
Great, thank you. I have a question that somebody chatted in. As you know, many firms have specialized over the last few years. However, so far during the COVID crisis, the firms that offer core services like tax, accounting, and audit have generally performed well, as their support is needed. In contrast, some boutique firms have suffered, particularly those who specialize to support retail or tourism sectors. Would you recommend that firms remain a full service firm or specialize?
So if you're anything more than a very small firm, the answer could be that you are selective in your specialization. So you don't do everything for everybody, but you have 3 different buyer groups. You have dentists, you have manufacturing companies, and you have retail or whatever it is. So that's one answer. I'm always comparing with my clients, and most of my clients have more than one buyer group. They have, 3 to 23. But the point about it is, depending upon the size of the firm, that you're always comparing market conditions in each one of them all the time. And sometimes retail is hot, and sometimes dentistry is hot. And so you're always comparing them. And so that's one answer. The other answer is that when you are in a market like retail or like hotels, then as you have this thunderbolt hit the market, and thunderbolts are going to hit the market when they're in mature markets, you're just looking, you're waiting and looking for what they're going to be. Then you have some choices. You can, with your service channel target, you can change 1, 2, or all 3 of those. So you can change up the service for the buyer group that you are currently in, and they need to buy something. We just don't know what. I used the example a couple weeks ago that if I'm selling bottled water to the entrance, to the pathways to the Sahara Desert, and then all of a sudden there's a deluge and the 40 days and 40 nights of rain, nobody needs bottled water, but they do need something. They need raincoats, they need canteens to put water in, whatever it is. So the first thing is, what are they going to need? And is this still a viable buyer group? Now, the other element you have is the targets themselves. And this is where you can say, well, real estate is not going to recover anytime soon. So what is an adjacent market? that I could think about. And adjacent markets are wonderful markets because they have the attributes of the targeted buyer group, and you have something that you can port over. So for example, perhaps I would segue into senior living and skilled nursing facilities. Okay, I could do that. If I'm in retail, and I know retail is going to get hammered, but I know that retail is just one piece of the end of the supply chain. But if you go upstream in the supply chain, you have wholesale distribution, and let me tell you, that is going to be hotter than a firecracker over the next few years, big time hot. So that's the other thing, is you pick adjacent markets, and sometimes you do have to abandon the market that you were in, and that's what happened to me in the dot-com bust. There wasn't any market that was adjacent. There was now a service set that I had, right? But there was no buyer group that was going to be viable in the not too distant future. But I pivoted immediately away from, I say immediately, within several months, after it became clear to me after several months of pounding the pavement and seeing what's out there, that it wasn't going to change anytime soon. Then I just couldn't get out of there fast enough. And I immediately looked at other markets, and I found that the CPA firm market was just absolutely a flush with opportunity. And that's how I ended up here in the first place, is one of those major pivots.
Thank you. I have one other question. There is pressure to make decisive decisions now. However, we know from the financial crisis of 2009, some decisions were made too quickly. What they give is letting staff go ahead and later regretting it when they faced a shortage a couple of years later. How can we make decisions rapidly, but with good insight?
Great question. And I know that some of you who have worked with me are going to know the answer to it. And the answer, when in doubt, is always research calls. The market always prevails. And because it does, if you are constantly on an ongoing basis, and believe me, I religiously make at least 2 research calls a week in non-crisis times. And now I'm making them like all day long, every day, not all day, every call, but lots and lots of my calls right now are research calls. Where are my firms going to be in 6 months? Where are they going to need to be in 12 months? How am I going to take them there? It's just constant research calls. And that informs the decisions we make in Crosley & Company. Do we keep the people that we have or not? Am I going to have enough demand? What is it going to look like 6 to 12 months? And when you do that, when the market becomes the focal point of your decisions, then what happens is you start seeing things in a whole different way. Because if not, you're sitting in a room with a lot of people who have a lot of really good opinions, but the market is the one that will help you make those decisions and make the best decision with the data that you have. And you won't be right all the time. As you know, in the business world, you can't, but you'll make the best decisions, and you'll know why they are being made, and it will be incremental. You'll make the incremental decisions based upon all the available data that you have.
Gale, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Very, very worthwhile.